On the eve of our wedding, I saw a text message my boyfriend received on his phone. Let's indulge ourselves once before getting married. I won't ask you to take responsibility. Are you afraid that Ava will find out? Don't worry. She's so starved for love that as long as you're a bit nice to her, she'll be eager to worship you on her knees. The person who sent the message was my best friend who had just broken up with her boyfriend. Or at least, I thought she was my best friend. And my boyfriend only replied with one sentence: Ava must never find out. It was as if I had just woken up from a dream. Only then did I realize that the kindness that comes too easily is never cherished. When I came back from a business trip, my boyfriend and my best friend came to pick me up at the airport together. Unlike my gentle and almost dull personality, Stella was still the same, with a sweet and flamboyant smile. She gave me a warm hug and said in an exaggerated tone, "Honey, you're finally back. I've missed you so much." Then she pushed Ryan and said coquettishly, "Ava must be tired. Hurry up and buy her a cup of coffee." The way she ordered people around and her tone had an indescribable intimacy and familiarity. Since I got off the plane, Ryan had been a bit absent-minded. Pushed by Stella, he frowned slightly. He pursed his lips and still didn't say anything, then turned and went to the convenience store. Stella shouted after him, "And I want one too." Ryan interrupted her impatiently, "I know, mango pomelo sago with 30% sugar." "That's right." Watching Ryan walk away, Stella turned to me with a smile. "Ava, why did you come back early?" I forced a smile and said, "I finished my work ahead of schedule, so I came back." Elite. Actually, I received a call from my colleague Emma. I worked day and night like crazy to speed up the progress and finally finished my work early and came back. "Ava, I need to tell you something. You must stay calm. I seriously suspect that Ryan is cheating on you with your best friend." Emma was afraid that I wouldn't believe her and explained hurriedly, "I know you're getting married soon, but I saw it with my own eyes." Along with the message, there was also a photo. At the entrance of a hotel late at night, Ryan was holding Stella's bag in one hand and had his other arm around her waist. Stella was all limp, lying on Ryan's chest with her hands around his neck. I clenched my phone tightly and my heart skipped a beat. Ryan and I were classmates in college. We were each other's first love. In the words of his friends, Ryan's understanding of love began the moment he saw me. He fell in love with me at first sight. After secretly loving me for 3 years, he successfully confessed his love, and then we had a stable 4-year relationship. He was an impeccable boyfriend, and it was only natural that we were preparing to get married. His affectionate eyes had always been fixed on me alone. I remember when Stella first came back, I held a welcome party for her. At the dinner table, when she learned that I was Ryan's first love, she teased him with great interest. "Really? You're so handsome but you've only been in one relationship. What a waste. How unlucky are you?" I was stunned for a moment. Ryan slowly took my hand and intertwined our fingers. "Isn't it lucky enough to meet Ava directly, fall in love, get married, and spend our lives together?" Stella was speechless. After a while, she pursed her lips. "Cut it out. You two are so boring." Stella came to my house 3 months ago. 3 months ago, Stella suddenly sent me a message saying that she had just broken up with her boyfriend and urgently needed to come back to China to relax and heal her broken heart. She wanted to come to me. We hadn't been in touch since she went abroad in high school. I was very happy that she was coming back this time. I took her to my house, accompanied her every day, took her shopping, ate delicious food, had fun, and bought gifts for her. I hoped that she could cheer up as soon as possible. Stella liked to cling to me very much. Every time Ryan approached me, Stella would push him away, wrap her arms around my waist, and say coquettishly that she wanted to monopolize me. Because she took up all of my time, Ryan didn't like Stella at all and was cold towards her. Only when Stella was not around could he be affectionate with me for a while. He put his arms around my waist, buried his face in my shoulder, and his warm breath was on my neck. His voice was hoarse and sounded a bit sad. "Your friend really has no sense of boundaries. I just got my proposal accepted, but you're occupied by her all day long. There's no time for you to accompany me." I patted Ryan's hand to comfort him. "Come on. We still have a long life ahead of us. Stella is my best friend. She just broke up with her boyfriend. It's not nice for us to show our affection in front of her, right?" Ryan could only restrain the desire in his eyes, grabbed my wrist, and kissed it again and again. Because of preparing for the wedding and the honeymoon trip, I had to hurry up and finish several projects at hand. I needed to go on a business trip for a month. Before I left, I was very worried. I was afraid that when I was away, Ryan would be cold to Stella and make her feel embarrassed. I booked a hotel for Stella and explained to her apologetically, "Ryan's work materials are all in the study at home. It's really inconvenient for him to move out. Otherwise, I would have asked him to live outside." Stella kissed my face. "Honey, you're still so considerate. But you don't need to spend money on me. The house is so big, and I'm always out at night and sleep during the day." I won't run into Ryan at all and won't be in his way. I was a bit hesitant and still wanted to persuade Stella. But it's not appropriate for you two to live together alone while I'm away. Stella immediately got red-eyed and angrily went to pack her luggage. Ava, do you also think I'm annoying and want to drive me away? You're my best friend. Even you treat me like this. I knew I shouldn't have come back. Just like in high school, Stella was still a bit willful and spoiled, and I still found it hard to refuse her. Finally, I sighed and still considered that she had just broken up with her boyfriend and her emotions were unstable. So I let her stay at home. In the first few days of my business trip, Ryan called me every night. Besides saying that he missed me, the content of our calls was mostly his complaints about Stella. Stella went to the kitchen to cook instant noodles in the middle of the night and almost set the place on fire. He had to get up and cook another bowl for her. Stella was scared by a stranger who followed her and knocked on the door during the day, and she insisted that he rush home from the company. Stella caught a cold and had a fever, and she bossed him around like a spoiled princess, asking him to bring her tea and water. Stella said she wanted to thank him for taking care of her and ironed his clothes for him, but stupidly burned his shirt. Gradually, Stella became the main topic of our calls. Perhaps Ryan himself didn't even notice that he hadn't mentioned asking Stella to move out for a long time. Things seemed to be developing in an unpredictable direction. With uneasiness in my heart, I analyzed the materials all night long and worked nonstop, hoping to go back as soon as possible. The turning point of the matter happened half a month ago. That day, Ryan told me in a very bad tone that Stella wanted to try on my wedding dress and clumsily tore it. We had put a lot of effort into having that dress custom made by a famous designer. Our thoughts and feelings for each other were incorporated into the design. It was unique. Ava, I'm really about to be driven mad by her. I scolded her a few words, and she ran out in a huff. Ryan was a bit gnashing his teeth. In the middle of the night, in a strange place, and she didn't even know where to go. She deserved it if she got lost. I didn't have time to figure out whether there was more disgust or worry in Ryan's tone. After getting angry, Ryan was obviously a bit distracted. After a long silence, he dropped the sentence, "I'd better go and look for her," and hung up the phone. For the whole night, I was worried about Stella's safety. I suppressed the bitterness in my heart and dialed their numbers again and again with my phone in my hand. Neither of them answered. Only the echoing sound of the dial tone reverberated in my room. Suddenly, I felt an inexplicable panic. It was a very long night. The wind and rain outside the window were swaying, and the occasional flashes of lightning shone on the materials spread out on my desk, just like the nights when I was bent over my desk doing homework in my teenage years. In an instant, my thoughts were pulled back to the gloomy high school days. I'm not a very strong person. During those days when I was isolated, excluded, and had no way to escape from the pressure, it was Stella who held my hand like a little son. After she went abroad, Ryan quickly entered my life. They were both my most important spiritual supports. But on this stormy night, they both disappeared. I had dreams all night. The scenes in the dreams were chaotic. When I woke up, my face was covered with tears. At noon, Ryan called me back. His voice was a bit hoarse. Last night, Stella went to a bar alone and was forced to drink by strangers. I took her to a hotel nearby to have a rest. Don't worry. I hesitated and asked, then where did you sleep last night? Were you with Stella? What exactly do you want to say? Ryan impatiently interrupted me. There was a strong sense of tiredness in his voice. Taking care of a drunk person is already exhausting. I don't have the energy to coax you anymore. During the years we had been together, Ryan had never spoken to me in such a cold tone. Suddenly, I felt like a child who had done something wrong. My nose felt sour and I whispered an apology to him. There was a pause on the other end of the phone. Probably hearing the sobbing in my voice, Ryan softened his tone. Sorry, Ava, I shouldn't have yelled at you. I'm just too tired. He comforted me gently. I've contacted the craftsman about the wedding dress. It can be repaired to be as good as new. It won't affect our wedding. Ava, I'm waiting for you to come back. I thought that as long as I went back as soon as possible, everything would be okay. So I worked even harder to speed up the progress and finally managed to advance my return time to today. The drinks were bought back. Ryan remembered my preferences very clearly. The coffee had double cream and less ice. Stella took a sip of hers and frowned. There's too much sugar. Why is it so sweet? Then she raised the cup and very naturally handed the straw to Ryan's mouth. Ryan almost subconsciously lowered his head and took a sip. They were very close to each other. Ryan's lips just covered Stella's lipstick mark. The scene was a bit ambiguous, just like a couple deeply in love. Noticing my gaze, Stella widened her eyes as if suddenly realizing something. Ava, I'm sorry. I've been abroad for too long. I forgot that men and women should keep a proper distance in China. How could I let your boyfriend drink from the straw I used? I'm so stupid. She pouted in distress. On her naturally cute and sweet face, there was a kind of childlike innocence. She shook my arm and acted coquettishly. Ava, you won't mind, will you? Ryan was a bit annoyed. He threw the paper cup into the trash bin with a cold face and took a tissue to wipe his lips. Knowing that you're stupid, you still had to set an alarm to come with us? You're even stickier than chewing gum. Stella complained to me angrily. Ava, look, your boyfriend is bullying me again. I stared at them blankly. My mind was in chaos and I couldn't hear their bickering clearly. After I left, their relationship seemed to still be bad. But I knew. Everything was different from before I left. There was a certain subtle atmosphere between them that couldn't be ignored. When I got home, I packed my luggage and then put the gifts I had brought back into the study. Besides the ones for Ryan and Stella, there were also gifts for my parents and Ryan's family. I had chosen them all with great care. Especially for Ryan's sister Ivy, I had managed to buy the limited edition figurine that she had always wanted. The little girl would surely be very happy when she saw it. I sorted them out one by one and put them into the cabinet. When I got close to the desk, I suddenly smelled a familiar sweet and fresh fragrance. It was the perfume that Stella often used. There were also several long hairs tangled on the floor. I couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. The intertwined figures in the photos and those ambiguous details between them all rushed into my mind at once. The fear of suspicion slowly rose to my chest like bubbles, almost choking my breath. Just at that moment, a piece of charming lace gauze in the gap under the desk caught my eye. I slowly squatted down and picked it up. It was a translucent white triangular lace. One of the crossed straps was broken, as if it had been torn violently. I recognized this piece of lingerie. In the shopping mall, Stella had once held the thin shoulder straps and smiled as she compared it in front of the mirror. It's both innocent and sexy. It suits me very well. Seeing that she liked it, I paid for it and gave it to her as a gift. Now, it just appeared blatantly in my boyfriend's study. The bubble of suspicion in my chest finally burst. Almost instantly, a sharp pain surged up. Just then, Ryan came in. Ava, stop tidying up for a while and take a rest, okay? I picked up that piece of lace fabric, my throat tightening. My voice was so hoarse that it didn't even sound like my own. Ryan. Why is there someone else's lingerie under your desk? Ryan's face changed immediately. After a pause, he reluctantly pretended to be nonchalant and said in a relaxed tone, why else? It must be that friend of yours who ran in without permission again. As he said that, he came over and tried to hug me. Ava, don't think too much, okay? Within arm's reach, when my eyes caught sight of something, I suddenly pushed Ryan away as if I had been stung. I stared at him blankly. It was very hot outside. Just now, when he was outside, the buttons of his shirt were buttoned up neatly to the top one, tightly covering the area below his Adam's apple. And now, in the slightly open collar, there were clearly ambiguous red marks. They were clearly branded on his collarbone, extremely glaring. I heard my own voice ring out hollowly. What's that? Ryan looked down in surprise following my gaze. Then, he quickly closed his collar and interrupted my inquiry almost rudely. It's just an allergy. My voice was very soft. Ryan, I've seen you have allergies before, and I've also seen hickeys. Do you think I'm so slow-witted? I simply tore off that layer of ambiguous pretense and asked directly, on the night when you and Stella went to the hotel, neither of you answered the phone, Ava. Ryan was a bit impatient, his brows furrowed tightly. Stella is your best friend. What on earth are you thinking about all day long? The torn lingerie under the desk. The blatant hickeys. The abnormal and overreacting attitude. What the truth was, it was self-evident. While I was gulping down cups of coffee for our honeymoon trip and staying up all night to catch up with work, my best friend was wearing the lingerie I gave her and doing all the things that a couple should do with my boyfriend. On that terrifying and heart-wrenching rainy night, when I was holding my phone and calling them again and again, they were intertwined with each other under the rumble of thunder and lightning. Perhaps I had been somewhat prepared psychologically, but at this moment, I actually just felt that the heart that had been hanging in the air for a long time finally fell to the ground, smashing the beautiful illusions of my life to pieces. However, it wasn't that hard to accept. I closed my eyes and my voice was surprisingly calm. Ryan, let's cancel the wedding. I had been quiet for many years and was used to not shouting or yelling even if I had any emotions. There were just undercurrents surging beneath the calm surface. Your family has been very kind to me. I don't want to make it too embarrassing. You can find a reason yourself and tell them. Ryan coldly blocked my way. Getting married isn't a joke. Without any evidence, you can't just say cancel it and cancel it. Ava, you're being too willful. It seems that it's true that people who are guilty will be especially self-righteous. Looking at that familiar face again, I just felt that it was completely different from before. I didn't want to look at it again. I took a deep breath. Get out of the way. Ava. Ryan frowned, trying to hold back his impatience in his tone. I can explain everything. Don't go. Let me explain it to you slowly, okay? I pushed his hand away. Be magnanimous and leave each other some dignity. Ryan's eyes were dark and gloomy, and he held onto my wrist tightly. I held back the tears that were about to overflow and stared at him unyieldingly. Suddenly, a light chuckle came from outside the door, interrupting our stalemate. Are you really so free and easy, Ava? Stella walked in slowly, finally peeling off the shell of her innocent, cute and pretentious appearance, smiling maliciously, with undisguised mockery in her eyes. But on the night when we slept together in the hotel, she came close to me, and her tone sounded gentle and pitying. Your phone rang by the bedside for the whole night. Ryan's expression visibly panicked, and he said in a deep voice to Stella, shut up. Ryan hurriedly explained to me, Ava, listen to me. It's not what you think. The calmness that I had managed to maintain finally shattered completely, and I couldn't help covering my head and shouting, get away from me. All of you. Get away. I crouched on the roadside, retching repeatedly, feeling extremely nauseous in my stomach. I didn't know how I had rushed out of that house. My phone kept ringing. I picked it up and heard Emma's voice. Ava, are you coming back today? How was it? Did you find anything? I opened my mouth, my voice hoarse. What you saw was all true. Emma immediately cursed. Last time I told you that so-called best friend of yours wasn't a good person, but you still defended her. Bah, ungrateful wretch. You should have kicked her to the roadside and let her fend for herself. Then she got nervous again. Ava, are you okay? Where are you? I'll come and pick you up right away. Emma soon came and took me to her home. She ordered a lot of food that I liked and also prepared a lot of wine. She set up a small table in front of the French window, saying that I should get drunk to relieve my sorrows and let out all the emotions that needed to be vented, so as not to hold them in and make myself sick. Watching her busy around, a trace of warmth rose in my cold heart again. Fortunately I was lucky enough to know Emma. Emma and I were both interns in the company originally. At that time, there were many interns, but there were only 2 full-time job openings, and the competition was extremely fierce. Unfortunately, Emma fell ill with a severe cold during the critical period of the project. I lived in the dormitory next to hers. Seeing her alone and sick, I couldn't bear it and took care of her for a week with a mask on, sharing the project progress with her. Emma told me later, at that time, everyone wished there would be one less competitor. When I got sick, my roommate moved to another dormitory, but you still came to help me. Ava, do you know that after you made medicine for me, put a cold compress on my forehead and left after bringing me food for the first time, I was so touched that I cried until my nose was blocked under the quilt. At that time, I decided that from then on, you, Ava, would be my best friend. She said it exaggeratedly, and I was amused. At that time, I thought she was very similar to Stella, enthusiastic and clingy. I also told Emma that she would surely like Stella. Unexpectedly, the situation after they met was beyond my expectation. Emma came to my house to deliver some materials and met Stella. At that time, things related to the wedding were constantly being delivered to my house, and I was busy dealing with them. Stella was very enthusiastic about helping me with the preparations and giving me suggestions at the same time. Ava, your fingers are too thin. This ring doesn't suit you. This wedding photo. Why do they make you look so ugly? Let's take it again, okay? The betrothal gifts aren't much for Ryan's family. Does that mean they don't value you? Ryan has a sister, right? Younger sisters-in-law are the most troublesome. You should be careful. I knew that Stella was always like this, speaking too directly and not very pleasantly, so I didn't take it to heart. It wasn't until I heard her talking about Ryan's family that I shook my head and explained for them. No, Ryan's mother treats me like her own daughter, and his sister is also very nice. Stella didn't take it seriously. Everyone pretends before marriage. You'll know after marriage. Emma couldn't bear to listen anymore and directly contradicted Stella. What an interesting friend you are. For Ava's wedding, such a happy event, you don't give her good wishes but instead seem to be cursing her with every sentence. Stella quickly came over and hugged me, acting coquettishly. Ava, I'm just worried that you'll be bullied. Emma immediately retorted, if you're worried that she'll be bullied, go find the people who bully her. What are you babbling about here? They were at loggerheads, and I quickly tried to smooth things over and took Emma to send her back. Along the way, Emma was scolding me with deep regret. Ava, you still said I'm like her? Am I like her? Where on earth am I like that scheming bitch? And you're even nicer to her than to me? It really pisses me off. I also knew that Stella had her shortcomings. However, thinking about how kind Stella was to me in high school, I always had an extra filter for her. At that time, my parents' quarrels that had lasted for more than 10 years had reached a white-hot stage, and there were constant shouts and curses at home every day. And because of the long-term stress and depression, Ryan coldly blocked my way. Getting married isn't a joke. Without any evidence, you can't just say cancel it and cancel it. Ava, you're being too willful. It seems that it's true that people who are guilty will be especially self-righteous. Looking at that familiar face again, I just felt that it was completely different from before. I didn't want to look at it again. I took a deep breath. Get out of the way. Ava. Ryan frowned, trying to hold back his impatience in his tone. I can explain everything. Don't go. Let me explain it to you slowly, okay? I pushed his hand away. Be magnanimous and leave each other some dignity. Ryan's eyes were dark and gloomy, and he held onto my wrist tightly. I held back the tears that were about to overflow and stared at him unyieldingly. Suddenly, a light chuckle came from outside the door, interrupting our stalemate. Are you really so free and easy, Ava? Stella walked in slowly, finally peeling off the shell of her innocent, cute and pretentious appearance, smiling maliciously, with undisguised mockery in her eyes. But on the night when we slept together in the hotel, she came close to me, and her tone sounded gentle and pitying. Your phone rang by the bedside for the whole night. Ryan's expression visibly panicked, and he said in a deep voice to Stella, shut up. Ryan hurriedly explained to me, Ava, listen to me. It's not what you think. The calmness that I had managed to maintain finally shattered completely, and I couldn't help covering my head and shouting, get away from me. All of you. Get away. I crouched on the roadside, retching repeatedly, feeling extremely nauseous in my stomach. I didn't know how I had rushed out of that house. My phone kept ringing. I picked it up and heard Emma's voice. Ava, are you coming back today? How was it? Did you find anything? I opened my mouth, my voice hoarse. What you saw was all true. Emma immediately cursed. Last time I told you that so-called best friend of yours wasn't a good person, but you still defended her. Bah, ungrateful wretch. You should have kicked her to the roadside and let her fend for herself. Then she got nervous again. Ava, are you okay? Where are you? I'll come and pick you up right away. Emma soon came and took me to her home. She ordered a lot of food that I liked and also prepared a lot of wine. She set up a small table in front of the French window, saying that I should get drunk to relieve my sorrows and let out all the emotions that needed to be vented, so as not to hold them in and make myself sick. Watching her busy around, a trace of warmth rose in my cold heart again. Fortunately I was lucky enough to know Emma and I were both interns in the company originally. At that time, there were many interns, but there were only 2 full-time job openings, and the competition was extremely fierce. Unfortunately, Emma fell ill with a severe cold during the critical period of the project. I lived in the dormitory next to hers. Seeing her alone and sick, I couldn't bear it and took care of her for a week with a mask on, sharing the project progress with her, Emma told me later. At that time, everyone wished there would be one less competitor. When I got sick, my roommate moved to another dormitory, but you still came to help me. Ava, do you know that after you made medicine for me, put a cold compress on my forehead and left after bringing me food for the first time, I was so touched that I cried until my nose was blocked under the quilt. At that time, I decided that from then on, you, Ava, would be my best friend. She said it exaggeratedly, and I was amused. At that time, I thought she was very similar to Stella, enthusiastic and clingy. I also told Emma that she would surely like Stella. Unexpectedly, the situation after they met was beyond my expectation. Emma came to my house to deliver some materials and met Stella. At that time, things related to the wedding were constantly being delivered to my house, and I was busy dealing with them. Stella was very enthusiastic about helping me with the preparations and giving me suggestions at the same time. Ava, your fingers are too thin. This ring doesn't suit you. This wedding photo. Why do they make you look so ugly? Let's take it again, okay? The betrothal gifts aren't much for Ryan's family. Does that mean they don't value you? Ryan has a sister, right? Younger sisters-in-law are the most troublesome. You should be careful. I knew that Stella was always like this, speaking too directly and not very pleasantly, so I didn't take it to heart. It wasn't until I heard her talking about Ryan's family that I shook my head and explained for them. No, Ryan's mother treats me like her own daughter, and his sister is also very nice. Stella didn't take it seriously. Everyone pretends before marriage. You'll know after marriage. Emma couldn't bear to listen anymore and directly contradicted Stella. What an interesting friend you are. For Ava's wedding, such a happy event, you don't give her good wishes but instead seem to be cursing her with every sentence. Stella quickly came over and hugged me, acting coquettishly. Ava, I'm just worried that you'll be bullied. Emma immediately retorted, if you're worried that she'll be bullied, go find the people who bully her. What are you babbling about here? They were at loggerheads, and I quickly tried to smooth things over and took Emma to send her back. Along the way, Emma was scolding me with deep regret. Ava, you still said I'm like her? Am I like her? Where on earth am I like that scheming bitch? And you're even nicer to her than to me? It really pisses me off. I also knew that Stella had her shortcomings. However, thinking about how kind Stella was to me in high school, I always had an extra filter for her. At that time, my parents' quarrels that had lasted for more than 10 years had reached a white-hot stage, and there were constant shouts and curses at home every day, and because of the long-term stress and depression, I had an outbreak of urticaria with red spots all over my face and body, and I didn't dare to go out. During the quarrels, Dad would say to Mom, "Is it hard for you to take care of Ava at home? Look what you've made her into." Mom wouldn't be outdone. "Who does she look like? She's still from your Ava family's trash. No matter how well you take care of her, it's useless." I stood there at a loss. Like a shameful mark that no one wanted, my parents were both desperately trying to throw this shame at each other. During those days, I was so self-abased that I couldn't hold my head up, and I didn't have a single friend at school. It was Stella who took the initiative to play with me. She insisted on pulling me out of the corner and took me running around the campus. The naughtiest boys in the school laughed at me. The prettiest and the ugliest stayed together every day. "Are you planning to form a group? Angel and Devil? Toad and Swan? Ha ha ha." I was extremely embarrassed, my face flushed red, and I wished I could cover my ears and hide in a corner. Stella was like a proud and beautiful swan. She pulled me in front of everyone, raised her chin, and scanned them all. "Ava is my friend now. Let's see who dares to say anything about her." She was beautiful and lively and was very popular in the whole school, and these guys were no exception. The boys ran away laughing and joking. Okay, Mississippi. We'll listen to you." At that moment, Stella was like a little sun in my eyes. I was very grateful to Stella. Knowing that her family background wasn't good and her studies were not good either, I often helped her with her homework, treated her to meals, and would buy her a copy of whatever I bought for myself. Although there were embarrassing moments during that period, there was more happiness and courage that grew out of having a friend. So, even though I later recovered from my illness, became beautiful and outstanding, and was admitted to the university I wanted, and had more and more friends around me, I still always remembered Stella's kindness. When I told Emma about these things, she looked as if she hated to see me so naive. "Don't you think Stella just wanted to use you as a foil? Besides, with your soft personality, it's really a good deal to be friends with you. Why would she refuse?" What did I say at that time? "Oh," I said, "she's my best friend. If all her kindness to me was for a purpose, then my life would be too sad." I downed the wine in the glass in one gulp and looked at the brightly lit city. It was so lively yet seemed so far away. Now it seems. My biological parents despise me, my boyfriend of 4 years betrayed me before marriage, and the person I thought was my best friend has never shown me any kindness. I looked up and smiled at Emma. "It turns out that my life is really so sad." Emma sighed. Unable to bear to scold me anymore, she came over to comfort me. "Come on. You still have me. From now on, I'll be your best friend, Ava. I promise that I'll never make you sad or disappointed." But after a pause, she shook her head again and said, "No, Ava, what I said was wrong. No matter when it is, you should love yourself first and rely on yourself. Think about yourself. You're good-looking, have strong working abilities, are so hardworking and kind-hearted. You don't need to please anyone. You yourself are the one most worthy of your own pleasing." Emma looked at me very seriously, with absolute certainty in her eyes. I blinked my eyes. The tears that I had held back for a whole day suddenly flowed down. I stayed at Emma's house. In these days, I reviewed my whole life and thought a lot. Was it my fault that my parents were so indifferent? Was it my fault that my friends and boyfriend betrayed me? I detached myself from my own perspective and calmly examined each of my relationships. Then I found that I had been sincere and had a clear conscience towards every one of them. If I were in their shoes, I would never become people like them. So it was never me who should be ashamed or afraid. It was them. That night, I bought myself a small cake. When I blew out the candles, I quietly said to myself, "Starting from today, I'll be a new me. Love yourself, Ava." These days, Ryan's calls and WeChat messages never stopped. I didn't want to listen to his excuses, so I resolutely blocked him, and the world became quiet. But at noon that day, my parents called, and they started scolding me as soon as they opened their mouths. "Ava, what's the matter with you? You've never been worry-free since you were a child. For such a big event as marriage, all relatives and friends have been informed. What are you making a fuss about now? Ryan is such a nice person. Don't you see if you're worthy of him or not? Why are you still acting like a spoiled lady?" Ryan's mother's tone was relatively gentle. "Ava, is there some misunderstanding? Your parents and we came here overnight." Ivy was also so worried that she almost asked for leave from school to come with us. "If you have any grievances, tell Auntie, and Auntie will teach him a good lesson for you." Apparently, Ryan had told the elders about the situation while skirting around the important issues and brought them here to put pressure on me. Emma was very angry. How could he be so shameless? He did such a despicable thing and still dared to make false accusations first. I said calmly, "He knows my character. I always deal with any unpleasant things by myself. He's sure that I won't make a scene in front of the elders." Since I was very young, I knew that whenever I encountered anything bad and told my parents about it, I would never get comfort but only blame. "It's all because you're too stupid to compete with others. Why don't others pick on others but specifically pick on you? Think about your own reasons. Once, I regarded Ryan as the person I would spend my life with and told him everything about myself without any guard. At that time, he hugged me into his arms very distressingly. Ava, I'll never let you suffer such grievances again in the future. Unexpectedly, he soon used it as a weapon to deal with me. Emma was very worried. Then what should you do? How about I accompany you to explain to Auntie and the others? I'll do what I should do. I tidied up my makeup, put on high heels, and got rid of the embarrassed look when I ran out. Whether it's a shadow or a scar, I'm the one who knows best how to solve my own problems. I'll never define myself by others' evaluations anymore. I went back to the place where I had fled in a hurry. When I walked into the living room, I saw the elders from both sides sitting neatly on the sofa, looking unfriendly, as if they were going to hold a criticism meeting. Ryan was lighting a cigarette for my father, looking like a dutiful and polite son-in-law. Seeing me, he quickly walked up to me with big strides, with a worried look on his face. Ava, you didn't even say where you went. I've been so worried that I haven't slept for several days. I sneered and shook off his hand. I believe you haven't slept. After all, there were so many evidences of your affair that needed to be destroyed, and you also had to appease Stella to prevent her from making a fuss. As soon as these words came out, everyone's expressions changed greatly. Ryan knew that I had always been submissive and cautious in front of my parents. He never expected that I would be so merciless. He was a bit flustered for a moment. Ava, I know you're still angry. Now that our parents are here, don't talk nonsense. My father scolded me in a deep voice. Ryan has told me that you brought Stella to our home yourself and then became suspicious for no reason. Thanks to Ryan's tolerance for you. Frankly speaking, if you want to be angry, just be angry and don't come back. It's always like this. Ever since I was a child, it's been like this every time. Even though I had expected this situation, I couldn't help feeling a bit desolate in my heart. I bit my lip and ignored my father's scolding. I sent them some screenshots of conversations and the surveillance records at home. Don't rush. Look at them first before talking. They opened their mobile phones and watched. Everyone's expressions on their faces were very interesting. The screenshots were between Stella and Ryan. Stella, let's indulge ourselves once before getting married. I don't need you to be responsible. Stella, afraid that Ava will find out? Don't worry. She's so lacking in love. As long as you treat her a little better, she'll be eager to worship you on her knees. Stella, even if she finds out, she won't dare to break up with us. And Ryan only replied to her with one sentence. Never let Ava find out. These screenshots were sent to me by Stella last night. Stella knew me well. In the past, if I had seen these messages, I would indeed have been heartbroken, on the verge of collapse, and would have taken the initiative to back down. Now, I neatly saved and sent them. After all, both Ryan's and my names were on the house property certificate. Such powerful evidence should not be wasted. However, what she said reminded me. I had taken care of arranging everything in the house, big or small, including the surveillance. And it was connected to my mobile phone. I endured my disgust and watched the surveillance records for more than 10 hours, and intercepted the most exciting parts. Mom happened to click on the video, and the unbearable voices immediately echoed throughout the house. Ryan's mother was so angry that she trembled all over and rushed up to slap Ryan. How could I raise such a morally corrupt person like you? How could you do such a shameful thing? Ryan immediately turned pale. In the face of the ironclad evidence, he couldn't say a word. I said slowly, you just wanted to have a little affair, but Stella didn't think so. In these days, I had done a lot of research. I contacted the classmates who went abroad with Stella and got a lot of shocking news. It turned out that Stella had gone abroad with her boyfriend at first. With the financial support from her boyfriend's family, she saw the outside world abroad. Then she thought her boyfriend wasn't good enough for her, so she dumped him and found a foreign boyfriend on Wall Street. Unexpectedly, the foreign boyfriend just wanted to play around and soon dumped Stella. Stella had no money and no working ability, so she could only hang around in bars for a long time, scurrying around to find men to cling to. Her life was in a mess, and her reputation in the circle was getting worse and worse. No one was really willing to marry her, so she had to leave in disgrace. She returned to China to find a succor. Ryan had a stable career and was an easy target, so she set her sights on him at a glance. I told Ryan, no matter what Stella promised you, she won't keep her word. She deliberately left hickey marks and her underwear for me to find and sent me such explicit chat records. She just wanted to force me to break up with you. Her purpose has always been to drive me away and find you as a fallback, not to make you happy or give you excitement. There's no such thing as a free lunch in the world. You underestimated her, and you should pay the price. Looking at these things, my father's face turned livid. Ryan, you're really out of line. How could you do such a thing? You can't do it again after getting married. Then he turned to me again. However, Ava, you're also at fault. If you hadn't brought that woman to our home, Ryan wouldn't have been unable to resist making mistakes. Besides, the wedding invitations have been sent out. Now that these things have come out, Mom, who hadn't spoken all the time, suddenly threw a cup. How dare you show your dirty thoughts? Of course you understand him because you're just as trashy as he is. Although Mom had never supported me, she was a strong-willed person. Otherwise, she wouldn't have quarreled with Dad for so many years. Dad's face turned red and then white. Just talk about the children's affairs. Why do you bring these things up? I couldn't help sighing. Fortunately, Ivy didn't come. This chaotic scene was really ugly and not suitable for her, a minor sister. Mom grabbed my arm. Let's go. We won't get married. Ava. Ryan called my name in an imploring tone. The trailing sound was shut behind the heavily slammed door. Mom dragged me away angrily for dozens of meters before she suddenly turned around and started to lose her temper with me. Ava, you're already an adult. Why are you still so useless? How could you be played by others like this? I think Stella's brain is dozens of times smarter than yours. You're so stupid. You deserve to be cheated on. Don't say you're my daughter when you go out. I don't have such a disgraceful daughter like you. It was like a basin of cold water poured over my head. The little flame that had just been lit because she had just defended me was extinguished immediately. I was stunned for a few seconds and then said softly, shouldn't I ask you that, Mom? Every time I had an argument with others, no matter who was right or wrong, except for blaming me blindly, have you ever supported me once? Have you ever been my backer? Remember that time in the 4th grade? I quarreled with a classmate. After we went back, we each told our parents. You didn't even listen to the whole thing before scolding me and asking me to cause less trouble. But the next day, she told me triumphantly that her parents took her out for a big meal to comfort her and also said that they would come to block me at the school gate after school to warn me. She was protected, valued, and spoiled, so she was so unscrupulous. But I was so afraid that I didn't dare to say a word in rebuttal, because at that time, I already knew that there was always no one behind me, and there would only be more harm. After that, whenever I suffered any harm or injustice, I never acted coquettishly to my parents or asked for comfort. So when Stella reached out to me in high school, I was extremely grateful and repaid her a lot. So after falling in love with Ryan, I felt cared for and treated gently for the first time. I plunged headlong into it and willingly offered my whole heart, and then it was shattered to pieces without any warning. With tears in my eyes, I questioned my mother for the first time. In your heart, even if I died one day, it would be my own fault, right? What gives me the courage? Perhaps she had never seen me like this before. My mother was stunned, and for the first time, there was a look of confusion and helplessness in her eyes. I took a deep breath to calm myself down and wiped away my tears. But it doesn't matter. I'm not a child anymore. And I don't need you to give me courage anymore. I left my mother standing there and walked away without looking back. The wedding was cancelled after all. It seemed that my mother suddenly realized something and stopped my father from continuing to look for me and scold me. When relatives and friends had some gossip about my cancelled wedding, she blocked it all. Things at home calmed down. But Ryan always came to find me. I hadn't moved out of the house yet, so I was temporarily staying at Emma's place. Every time Ryan showed up, Emma would be on high alert. Ava, you go first. Let me scold him to death. He was scolded every time he came and never got a chance to talk to me. So, he waited for me downstairs at my company instead. He had dark circles under his eyes and had lost a lot of weight. He looked really haggard. He stopped me and said, Ava, could you give me a chance? No one knows you better than I do. We've been together for so many years. You can't just sentence me to death like this. I interrupted him. Did you read the agreement I sent you? He was stunned for a moment and then said hurriedly, I've read it. That's not important. I can give you the whole house as a way to make up for a little bit of the harm I've done to you. That's what you said. Remember to write a proper agreement. I took out my phone to check the time. Now, I need to go to work. Please step aside. Ava. Ryan grabbed my wrist. Ava, please let me explain. Looking at his stubborn eyes, I guessed that I wouldn't be able to leave until I heard his nonsense, so I nodded. Go ahead. Was there still room for explanation for this mess? Ryan lowered his head and his voice was bitter. Ava, believe me. I've never liked anyone else. You're the only one I love deeply. Just thinking that I was about to get married and would be with the same person for the rest of my life, I continued his sentence. You just thought it was a pity. You thought that you hadn't tasted the other flavors of the colorful world and were tied to one person by marriage. It was a pity. So, you chose to seek some excitement before getting married, right? Ryan looked really pained. I'm sorry. I was so confused. I was just bewitched by Stella, I sighed. Ryan, I really liked you, very, very much. I placed all my beautiful expectations for life on you. Hearing this, his eyes lit up for a moment. I went on, but now, I'm really glad that I saw your true face before getting married. Ryan still wanted to argue, but I stopped him. Stop making excuses. The more you say, the more disgusting it gets. There will always be excuses. Now it's just seeking excitement. If we had really gotten married, there would be emptiness during pregnancy, many conflicts when taking care of children, high work pressure, every dissatisfaction in life could become an excuse for you to cheat. When you find a moldy spot on an apple, in essence, it's already rotten. It just shows up in that one place for now. So, the reason you would cheat is essentially because you're a bad person. We were each other's first love. I always thought that being able to love only one person in a lifetime was the romance that we could look back on for our whole lives. But in your heart? You thought it was a loss. I smiled. If your dream is to be a rotten guy, then you and Stella are really a match made in heaven. Ryan's face turned pale and he murmured, I'm sorry. I pushed his hand away and shook my phone. Alright, I should go to work now. After walking a few steps, I turned back. By the way, remember to sign the agreement. If you're not straightforward about it, the video won't just be enjoyed by the few of us. You're in a listed company. You still need to care about your reputation, right? Later, Stella invited me to have coffee once. She wore delicate makeup and still had a sweet smile. She carefully looked at my expression for a few seconds. Not bad. I thought you'd be crying for days and nights. I smiled. You sacrificed your charm to help me figure out what a scumbag he is and let me cut my losses in time. It's a good thing worth celebrating. Not seeing the pain on my face, Stella slowly put away her smile and raised her chin. Don't think that just because Ryan didn't want to marry me, I lost. Since high school, I've always wanted to see what your expression would be like when you found out that you had been played all along. You know what? I had been looking forward to seeing you break down that day for a long time. It was so satisfying. Ha ha ha. I didn't say anything and just looked at her pitifully as she tried to pretend to be calm. Don't look at me like that. I hate that look the most. Stella suddenly got excited, as if she wanted to vent all the long-suppressed dissatisfaction. Whether you look down on me or dislike me, I was born into that kind of family. If I were as stupid as you, I would have died in some corner long ago. I've made it this far all by myself. How can a fool like you have such a smooth life? Do I, Stella, need your sympathy? I thought she was so self-righteous that it was really funny. I opened a photo and showed it to her. It was sent to me by Ivy. In the photo, Stella's hair was messy, her face was swollen and bruised, and she looked extremely embarrassed with a panicked look in her eyes. She didn't have the calmness that she pretended to have in front of me at all. There was also Ivy's message attached. Ava, don't worry. If this green tea bitch dares to show up in front of me again, I'll beat her up every time. She won't succeed. Woo-woo, it's all my brother's fault for being so useless. I won't let him off either. He doesn't deserve to marry you, but I'll always regard you as my sister. Poor .gif. Stella's pupils suddenly shrank and her face changed instantly. I said calmly, stop pretending, Stella. I know you're in a mess. No money, no job, no education, and no one wants to take you in. In high school, you were the only friend I had. Weren't you the same? You were a well-known delinquent girl. Among the girls, I was the only one who didn't care about your bad reputation. As for those men, what you used to tempt them with was what they wanted from you. No one would take you seriously. Stella's face turned ashen. Her lips trembled and finally she couldn't smile anymore. I stood up and looked down at her. Here's my last piece of advice for you. If your family background is poor, you should seize every opportunity to learn and build a foundation for yourself instead of using men as your comfort zone. Go find a job. Maybe it's not too late to save your ruined life. Never show up in front of me again. You don't deserve it. Perhaps they realized that I was no longer the self-abased and timid Ava and wouldn't be manipulated by them anymore. After that, they never came to bother me again. I heard that Stella was unwilling to let it go and kept pestering Ryan, either asking for marriage or money. It was a huge mess and Ryan was almost about to lose his job. It seemed that she didn't take my last piece of advice to heart. However, seeing them fighting with each other like dogs biting each other was kind of like karma. On the day when Ryan's house transfer agreement was signed and sent to me, the honeymoon trip that I had booked was about to start. Looking at the beautiful tropical plants, the fine white sandy beach, the blue sea water, and the sunny sky in the travel brochure, Emma felt really sorry. What a pity to waste such a carefully arranged two-person trip. How could it be wasted? It's a great holiday and the beautiful scenery of Bali. I handed Emma a document. Aren't you always wanting to be in the same group with me? I've already applied and got approved. We'll have an early holiday this year and start a new project together next year. Emma couldn't believe it. This is a 1-month holiday. I winked at her. Now, let's set off together. She came to her senses and was overjoyed. She laughed and hugged me, cheering. I smiled and looked into the distance. The sky was high, the sea was vast, and it was a clear day. Ava, you're about to start a new journey. The end.